All right, here we go. It is my pleasure to bring in a good friend of mine, Melynn Huntley. She has been many things here on the High Plains. She's an artist, she's an avid golfer, and she is the former elections administrator for Potter County. She has a fascinating life, and I wanted to bring Melynn in just to talk about it. And first of all, obviously, your time, most people know you through your work at election administrator in Potter County. How long were you there,
10
Melynn?
years.
10 years. To me, it seems like so much longer than that
It's felt that way.
because of all the elections that we went through. Before
Yes.
you were doing elections, what did you do?
I was at AISD, and I managed a grant called Safe Schools, Healthy Students.
I remember that, actually. Yeah.
And the big thing was we stopped school shootings. And that was really the whole plan behind that, by addressing everything that's present, which is bullying and drugs, alcohol, mental health disorders, everything that's present in elections.
I forgot all those years of interviewing you over there
Yes.
because that seems like a lifetime ago.
It does.
Back when Rod was still there.
Right.
The athletic director was it Tex?
Nolan.
Yep, Tex Nolan.
Yeah, and I did that for 8 years. And before that, I was in graphic design and worked in advertising.
And now you are enjoying retirement somewhat. You're
Yes.
still a phenomenal artist. You're still doing lots of work there, right?
I am. I'm doing, I oil paint. And really the first time when I was retired and someone referred to me as an artist, I turned around and looked to see who they were talking about.
Yes.
And then finally I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to own that.
Yeah, because you are. So the reason why I wanted to bring, because I think it's very topical, because I didn't, as a matter of fact, as soon as this election over, I made a personal phone call to you and was like, oh my goodness, I don't think I've ever seen this. Have we ever, in the time that you were in Potter County, ever had to see an election that was, in a runoff election that was this close, 51 votes?
Not
for
in
Councilmember Place 3.
Not in a runoff election, but one of my very first elections, Nancy Tanner had multiple
Deborah
opponents.
McCart was in that
There
race.
were a lot of
so
them
many.
in there, and she, Nancy Tanner, won by 47 votes. 47 votes got her over 50%. Now, no one else was really, really close,
Right.
but it was 47 votes, and that was early on when I was first in that office.
Yeah, because she had worked in the office with Judge Ware forever.
Yes.
And I remember that she ran, and she committed herself to knocking on doors, and
She
she
did.
just got out there. And there was a lot of money in that one. I do remember, not anywhere close to what we're seeing now.
Oh, no, not like it was then. And it's funny because even in that one, as contentious as it was, at the end of the day, the candidates shake hands and they say, congratulations, I hope you do a great job.
Yeah, and Judge Tanner has been in that position ever since. How long ago was that?
Well, let's see. I don't know if you remember if she was even years or odd years, but I started in 2013, so it may have been 2014 that she was elected.
Yeah, we're dating ourselves. We've been at this a little bit.
A little bit.
A little bit, Melynn. So that is a very close one. It didn't go to a runoff. She had more than 50. And we thought for sure, in covering that election, that this thing's going to a runoff. There was way too many people. There were some big names in that race.
Yes, some well-known names.
And she pulled it off. And so now...
But what happened,
Yeah, tell me.
oddly, is you had 5 or 6 candidates, but they all posed themselves as running against her. So when that happens, it creates a 2-man race. And so people were going to the polls saying, well, do I want to vote for Nancy Tanner or one of these other candidates?
Right.
And that's how it was pulled off.
Wow. And she has been a mainstay over there at the Potter County Courthouse. So this election, now that it's not official, it's unofficial, but the results are in, and it looks like David Prescott won by 51 votes.
Yes.
Just talk to the people at home. What happens now? Everybody's like, "Oh, he won." We're not quite there yet. So talk to me about that process now. That what happens now?
Okay. So as you said, everything is unofficial. Everything is unofficial until a canvass. And so in the time in between, there's some votes that are still out there to be determined and to be counted. And those are what they call qualified late ballots. So that would be somebody who mailed their ballot in at the last minute, and it didn't arrive by time the election day was, but it arrived by last Monday.
I think it was Monday at 6, right? It had to be in by Monday at 6.
And you might have some overseas ballots that would be coming in from military, which is kind of unusual with a runoff, but it's possible. And then you have provisional ballots. And so provisional ballots, we all think about that with our IDs, because there were a lot of provisional ballots with photo ID.
Right.
And we still have a good number of provisional ballots from time to time. Sometimes people voted early and they forget, or they voted by mail and they forget. And they go to vote and the person says, you know, I think you already have. And or a real common one is they requested a ballot by mail and then decide to vote in person.
Okay. So
And
they get to
vote, but unless they turn in their ballot, their paper ballot, they can go ahead and vote, but they're going to vote provisionally, and then we have certified that their paper ballot never came in.
Okay, so in those and this is not something that just popped up, FYI, before anybody hits a conspiracy button somewhere and say, oh my goodness, this is part of the election process. This has always been there. And so those people who put the provisional, because we want to make sure that the votes are counted, the proper ones. Now, if that provisional ballot goes in because they didn't have their ID, they have X amount of days to get that settled up.
That's right. They have 6 days.
6 days. So the election was on Saturday. So this will be Friday.
Friday at the end of the day.
They had until that time to go in to their election administrator with their ID and say, I put a provisional ballot, here's my ID.
Correct.
And then they, is that called curing? Is that?
Yes.
So at that point, they're curing the problem and they're moving on, their ballot counts. But if they don't do that,
then
it was provisional and it doesn't go into the other pile and it doesn't matter.
Right, and a lot of times people, especially if there's a runaway election, they may have voted provisionally, but they look and think, well, my one vote is not going to change the outcome.
Right.
So they don't bother to come up. But sometimes they do.
Yeah, but in this case, 51 votes, it's razor thin, and so it does matter. You oversaw a runoff, very contentious. Well, it wasn't close at the end of the day, but the last one I can remember, it was Ginger Nelson and Claudette, but they asked for a recount. So you had to go through the recount process. So now, last I checked, I reached out to Councilmember Sherilyn. This may have changed because this interview is going to air a little bit later, but I did reach out to him. And at that time, he had not, but I fully expect him to. I mean, it's 51 votes. So what does a recount look like? What does that then trigger?
Yes. So if someone says, hey, I want a recount, there's 2 ways they can do it. They can just ask us to run the mechanical ones, the computer ones again, which is probably not what they're thinking.
You guys got asked, Claudette Smith asked, requested, and put the money up. They have to put money up in order to do this. They put the money up. This was 100% legal. This was all in the process.
Yes.
Claudette had every right to do that. She said, I want to recount. Yes. I want to hand recount.
Right, exactly. And so all the ballots in Randall County, all of the ballots in Potter County had to be counted by hand by people. So we had to figure out security to make sure nothing got to the ballots. No one could mess with the ballots before they got to the Civic Center, which is where we counted them. We had to have people there to count the ballots. We had to have checks and counter checks to make sure that things were going right. So basically we had tables of about 5 people.
Okay.
One person would call out what they saw on the ballot, and 2 or 3 people were making tick marks in a batch. Then they would compare and see if they had the same numbers. And there was somebody observing. There was somebody observing the person calling out what they saw to hold them accountable.
Okay. So then also at the time, you can have someone in the room, for example, in that instance, Ginger, former Mayor Nelson, and Claudette could have somebody in there.
Well, Claudette was there the whole time.
She was in there for this.
Yes,
They have every right to do that.
Yes,
Yeah.
and now Ginger came in. She just said, "Thank you guys for what you do," and she left. But Claudette stayed there the whole time.
Which was well within her right.
Yes, yes.
So that happens, and that's going to happen likely in Potter and Randall County. Explain to me ballot boards.
Okay, but I want to go back.
Okay, go back. Yeah.
Okay, I want to go back
Okay, go
because that did happen. And what happened in that election is it proved that our count was
that's
spot
right.
on.
You guys didn't. There wasn't a single vote. There wasn't.
No, there was nothing off. It was exactly as we had reported it and as we had counted it and presented it.
How many times did you count? You guys went through it a few times to make sure that you had it right.
You mean the hand count or
Yeah.
the other one? Because that's what people don't realize. We count at the election office.
Right.
Then we also do hand counts of just maybe a precinct or so, just to
Right.
check and double check.
Yeah.
So there's lots of counts that happen, but a table just did their batch.
And there wasn't one.
There was one table that I disagreed with what their count was based off of my spreadsheets. So we asked another table to count it, and there had been a human error at table 1. And so ultimately, the mechanical count, the computer count was correct. And it took it's hard to hand count. People don't think that, but we're just not made to do that.
Yeah. With that many. So Potter County does that. Randall County does that because we're
In
both
two
counties.
counties.
So nothing was wrong there. Explain to me election boards and how does that work and how
You're
is that?
talking about the ballot board.
Yeah, ballot boards. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry,
Yes.
Melynn. Yes, ballot boards.
Yes. Okay. So the ballot boards they're a group of people who open and consider and just make sure that someone who's voting by mail is indeed entitled to. And so they have to make sure that they signed it. They have to put their driver's license on there. The idea being that we want to make sure the person who voted that ballot by mail is the person who's supposed to, and not their daughter or son or somebody who grabbed it from the mailbox.
Right.
So
Got to make sure it's them.
Exactly, and that they were entitled to and everything else. So the ballot board has a list. We make sure things are right before they go in, and they basically they'll open them. They'll open the ballot envelope because there's 2 envelopes in there. And then they flatten them out and get them ready for us to count. But they qualify them and make sure that person was able to do that. Now, the ballot board is typically, if it's a partisan election, it's equal between the Republicans and the Democrats. There is a presiding judge of that, and it's really a numbers game, making sure that when your ballot came in, that it was counted like it was supposed to. And anecdotally, there was an election, and we got a call from the postmaster because someone had put their ballot in a U.S. post box. Another person came by, they call it fishing. They basically take those glue traps like you might use for a rat.
Yes.
And they tie a fishing line to it, and they'll stick it in the mailbox and see what they can pull out, hoping to get money, checks, information. And they had somehow, the glue trap, they'd lost it in that mailbox, and this person's ballot was stuck to the glue trap.
What?
Because they couldn't fish
They
it.
couldn't fish it out, so it just got stuck in there, and so that's attached to the ballot.
Right.
So what happened with the ballot?
So we get a call, and so we were able to figure out who it was. We gave them a new ballot, and they mailed a new ballot in. But
Wow.
that was probably the weirdest thing that ever happened with a ballot by mail.
That's fascinating. Mm-hmm. So now in this runoff or the recount, who's in charge of the recount?
The recount is, if there is a hand recount, the presiding person for the city would be the mayor.
Okay. So Mayor Cole Stanley would preside over
that.
the recount.
So with Claudette and Ginger, since Ginger was one of them, it was done by the city secretary per code. But this one would be done by Mayor Stanley.
Okay. So then Mayor Stanley just oversees the manual recount that would happen at I'm assuming the Civic Center. That's where the last one happened, right?
That's where we did the last one because we were counting 20,000 votes. This would just be 9,000. But you have to have space, and you've got, so we did it at the Civic Center last time. It worked out really well. It just is a big deal.
I'm curious, what are the rules? There's this Hamilton song, I Want to Be in the Room Where It Happens. Can someone go and watch the recount, or do they have to? They cannot. Okay.
They cannot. You have to be in there because you're an official and you are oathed in. And now, I say...
It's a huge responsibility.
I say that when you say, can someone, poll watchers can.
Okay.
Just like you would watch anything else. And so they have to be qualified poll watchers. And I know at that particular recount that Claudette had a good number of people that she had watching tables.
Okay.
And watching this happen.
So we went through the recount, not one discrepancy, and then we packed up the ballots and we moved on down the road. And then now, several years later, we're back at this. I'm fascinated about the amount of money now that gets involved in local elections. We've never seen anything like this.
We have not. It's good for you guys because you get to sell advertising on your station.
Well, it's good for the people that are upstairs that are in the...
Exactly. There's that.
And that department is great for them.
The mailers, just all of that. You're right. Yeah. The amount of dollars that's spent on elections, especially for an election for a city or a local office, is just astounding.
I talked with a former mayor of Amarillo not too long ago, just in passing. And I just said to him how things were going, checking in. And I said, do you remember, how did you handle it when you ran for mayor and ran for office? And he said to me, Andy, back then we just bought some signs.
Exactly.
We stuck them in some yards, and we went to some things. And he said, most of the time we did our own. He said it was just, this is the point that we've gotten to now. It is...
It's really crazy. And I remember, so I told you that I worked in advertising a long time ago, and I worked on Jerry Hodges' campaign against Deborah McCart a long time ago. Oh. And so, and Jerry Hodge was spending a lot more money than Deborah had. Deborah was knocking on doors. Mm-hmm. And Deborah beat him by knocking on doors and introducing herself. So, but that was back in that day. I don't know. Well,
Judge Tanner, I think, will tell you she won.
Knocked on doors.
She went and got in front of people and knocked on doors all those years ago.
And if you think about it, if somebody looks you in the eye and says, hi, I'm running for this office, I would really like your vote. Do you have any questions? That is kind of endearing.
Yeah. And it seems like it's, that's a lot better than getting a mailer, right?
Yes.
It seems like it's a lot.
Yes, or a text message. Or
the text messages.
Did
we not get some of those? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So let's put that behind us. Just like you set that in your past, that is now a thing. But we have had so many conversations over the last decade about elections, and I thought it would just be fascinating to bring you in for multiple different reasons, but specifically that because I wanted to see how it played out, and I wanted people at home to know a little bit about how the curing process works and what provisional ballots and how all of that plays out. And there will be some finality to this that we will be covering over on the website, myhighplains.com, which I'm really glad that you clicked on this under the Let's Talk About It. All right, so now let's talk about there are a lot of things. You love golf.
Oh, I do.
We have bonded over our passion for golf. How long have you been playing?
I didn't take up the game till I was 50 years old.
Really?
Yes, and so when I met my now husband, he said to me, I'm a golfer. I love to play golf. I will not be made feel guilty about playing golf. I would love for you to learn to play golf and play with me, but if you'd like to be a golf widow, that's okay too. You just get to choose.
Well, that's just kind of laying it on the table.
He did. He did. And so really for the first year, all I could say nice about golf was that I wasn't cleaning the refrigerator or doing the laundry, and isn't it a beautiful day?
Yeah.
And then after about a year, I thought, this is kind of fun.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden you find yourself going, man, it's nice out. You know what? Let's go play.
Let's get out. Even if it's just for a few holes, let's just get outside and, what are those people doing out there? I'd rather be out there.
It is a game. It's a love affair. I think golf is. I feel like we love it more than it loves us.
Oh, absolutely.
Like it's one of those the relationships where I'm putting a lot into this. I feel like I don't feel like I'm getting a lot back. But for me, and I don't know how you feel about it. Golf is my time where I turn off the phone and it gives me a moment to be outside and to be present with multiple things that we have going on in life. I sell, my wife and I have a real estate thing that we do together, which we love and we're incredibly passionate about. And then I have the station, which I've done for, I think, going on 28 years and all of that stress. But there's a moment where I step onto that first tee box and I can breathe.
Exactly. It is. And you know what?
It's therapy for me.
And at the end of the round, you may have scored terribly, but you remember that one great shot.
Yep, it keeps you coming back.
It does.
You don't remember the 9 you got on 12 because you shanked it in
exactly.
to the rough and had to re-tee and go from there. But you remember holing it out from 40 yards. Yeah.
And the friends that you make when you're out there, the conversations you have, just the bonds that happen by playing golf.
You made a good decision all those years ago, didn't you?
I did.
And so, are you still playing? Do you still get out?
Yes, I still get out.
You got a good group of friends that you're just out there?
I do. And my husband had a milestone birthday recently, and our son came in from Colorado, and we did a family scramble.
Oh, that's fun.
And it was just a delightful day. We loved every bit of it.
I would say this about golf because it can be overwhelming. I think we watch it on television and we see
easy, doesn't it?
And we're seeing Scotty Scheffler and John Rahm and Rory McIlroy and all of these amazing players do amazing things. That is so hard to do, but I would say don't get discouraged. Go out there and change the rules of the game just to have fun.
Right.
We have some friends that
don't write down the score.
No, who cares?
No.
It is, once you fall in love with it, it all kind of falls into line. But it's something that you can do outside. There's no technology outside of your rangefinder, maybe. There's just this peaceful, easy feeling about it. And we have amazing public municipal courses. We've got great courses at Tascosa, Lumpahoma, Emerald Country Club, Ross Rogers, Comanche Trail, Canyon, Country Club. We have so many around here in all the small towns. But do it. Have you ever had a hole-in-one?
I have.
You have?
I have. Have you?
No, I have not.
You're kidding.
No, I've only seen one in my life. One of my best friends, Michael Galloway, we were playing in a scramble, and he holed out at Comanche, and I got to see that. I was like, I think that went in. So tell me about your hole-in-one.
Mine was number 5 at Tascosa, and I didn't see it.
Okay, I'm thinking number 5. It's the par 3 par 3 along the fence after the par 5.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And so I hit my shot, and I thought, am I even going to get over the bunker? And as soon as I saw that it was going over the bunker, I just reached down to pick up my tee. And all of a sudden, everybody that we're playing with is going, it's going in, it's going in. And I'm looking up like, what?
And it goes in.
It did. It did, which just shows that eventually, if you hit it there.
You hit it enough times.
That one day that where they put that hole will line up with where your ball is.
Okay, so when was this?
Oh, my goodness. It's probably been 6 years ago.
So how long had you been playing prior to getting that hole-in-one?
Oh, not that long. I mean,
oh my gosh.
I mean,
this
when you
amazing.
consider this, you're going to get me to tell my age. But, yeah, I mean,
wow.
Not that long, all things considered.
So do you have that? So there's a thing in golf.
I have the flag.
Yeah.
But I didn't keep the ball.
Yeah. I really want a hole-in-one, but I want it to be in one of those places because if you play in enough golf tournaments, or if you don't, they like there's a car.
Yes.
I want it to mean something, which again, and it will mean anything. But golf is a fun little thing of milestones. It is. Remember the first time I, broke 90, and then the first time I shot 79, I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I wish I could continue to do it more regularly.
But it doesn't matter. And you know, the other beautiful thing about golf is a person who's just beginning can play with someone who's been playing a long time. That doesn't happen with tennis or other sports. And you don't have to have a whole team. You don't have to have the whole baseball team out there. It's just so flexible.
And I think you're probably the same as me. I wish I would have started at a much. I mean,
Yes.
I took a college class for a PE credit, and I kind of did a little bit. I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. And it wasn't until later when I had a little bit more disposable income where I could play a little bit more often. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is my thing. This is what I want to do. And so I have friends that they hunt and they fish, and I've got friends that they love racing car, all of that.
Right.
And I only have room for one. It's just.
No, I get that. But the thing about this is you can play golf years and years and years, where some of these things you can't.
That is the plan.
Yes.
That is the plan. And I always and ran into somebody today while I was playing golf, and he was just out there making it work. I don't know if they played a full 18, but out there walking, getting the exercise, doing it. And again, it's you sometimes have to modify the rules. I bet when you were elections administrator, you needed a lot of days on the golf course, didn't you?
I did. I needed to go home and say, I've got to do 3 holes. We're not eating dinner until I decompress.
Yeah. All right. So where can we go to see some of your art? I think, and again, you've seen Melynn Huntley on television for years talking about elections. I want them to know about your art. I want them to see it. Where can they go?
Well, I have some things that it's in the main mall area of Arts in the Sunset.
Okay.
And so I have a few pieces hanging down there. So that's one place you can go that's really easy. And then my studio's in my house. So there's a little bit there. But the main place would be down at Arts. What is
the medicine that art, what is the healing that happens with art?
It's really meditative when you're going to a different place in your brain. And so when you get into it and you're not kind of like the golf course.
Yeah.
You're just thinking about this next stroke or this color or the light balance of what I want to do.
Yeah. Painting. Golf, and now not counting votes. And
that's correct.
I would say that's pretty good. Well, continue to enjoy your retirement. And thank you for always taking my phone calls when I have an election question, even though you have put that
Someday
hat
I'm going to
aside.
forget, you know that, or the laws will change.
I know the laws will change or whatever, but I am so glad that I can still text or call and say, Melynn, what does this mean? And
Yes.
You've been such a great resource for me throughout all of these years in television, and I appreciate that. And
Thank you.
I love that we share a love for golf, and I just we've been lucky to have you here in Potter County, and just continue to do great things. I know that you love your family, and it means a lot that you came in today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for asking me.
Oh, you bet.
I've just kind of gone and disappeared for the most part, so.
Well, after we had that conversation the other day, I shot her, full disclosure, so I had one of my phone calls, and I called Melynn, and I'm like, hey, crazy runoff, right? And so we just got to talking about it, and I was like, man, let's hash that out. And then it's also a good time to catch up with somebody that I have known for years, and so I appreciate that. If you have somebody that you would like to be on the program, it's called Let's Talk About It, and it doesn't have to be a big deal. For me, it's something that I wanted to do, Melynn. You get in there, you're doing the news, and everything can be so heavy and I wanted to just create a space on our website where we could just talk about it.
Yeah.
And not be, very relaxed and whatnot. So I appreciate you, and
But
I hope
I have a question for you, though.
Okay, great.
Okay, so I just read a book called Maverick Town.
Okay.
It's the story of Old Tascosa.
Yeah.
It was written by John McCarty. In 1946.
Wow, this is only 7 years after Boys Ranch. Boys Ranch started in 1939.
Right.
Okay.
And so have you ever heard of the book or read it or anything?
I have loosely heard of the book. I have not read it, but I'm fascinated by it because I know a little tidbits of the history of Old
But
Tascosa.
what's interesting about it is he was a reporter with Amarillo Globe News.
Really?
And so this is a nonfiction book about Old Tascosa, and it talks about Pat Garrett being there and Billy the Kid and everything that was going on out there. But because it was written in 1946, he interviewed people that were alive and knew from 1880 and 1890 when Old Tascosa.
I've got to read this book.
You do. It's 1946. You've got to find it, though, and it has photographs of this, but fascinating to me. And so
So we had, growing up out at Boys Ranch, I went out to Boys Ranch in 1985. Growing up out there were all these stories, the Billy the Kid, the Pat Garretts, all of those things. Because Boys Ranch, Old Tascosa, had a fascinating history.
it does.
There was one summer that I went and because the sand tombstones had been long. I mean, most of them on Boot Hill, and most of those had been gone. And so they had put up these metal crosses many years ago. And our building trades team one summer went up there and cleaned them all off, painted everything, and redid redid the thing. And so it was truly fascinating. A little known fact, Melynn, I used to give tours. When I was a kid out at Boys Ranch, these huge buses would come in, kind of like holiday vacations now. You know, like you'll see Joel and John on a cruise to Alaska. Those kinds of trips used to come through Boys Ranch all of the time. And so during the summer months, I often would get on those buses and take them around and tell them a little bit of the story of Boys Ranch and a little bit about the history. So I will be fascinated
Oh,
I'll be fascinated
this
to
thing
know.
names names. It tells you the names of the dance hall girls, a.k.a. Ladies of the Evening, that were out there. There was Frog Lip Sadie, Homely Ann.
Wow, they were very descriptive.
They were.
They were very descriptive.
I mean, you're going to learn so much about the area. It's a great old book.
Okay.
Lots of just fun facts that you're like, didn't know that.
Okay, so tell me the name one more time.
Maverick Town.
Maverick Town.
Yes, and it was written in 1946 by John McCarty.
All right, I'm going to jump on. I'm going to see if I can find it on the Amazons. If not, well, I'll go digging. You know, there's a good chance I can reach out to Richard Nettlekoff, who is the executive director of Boys Ranch. They may even have a copy up there somewhere, or maybe even in the museum out in the old Potter.
Oh, I bet they do.
In the old courthouse.
Yeah, and this book ends just as MGM was getting ready to do
the
film Boys Ranch, which was kind of right after Boys Town. And so, but just kind of interesting.
Okay, I cannot wait to dive into that. Melynn Huntley, thank you for that book recommendation. Thank you for your time. And again, reach out to me. It's ajustice@kmr.com. If you've got some suggestions for it, let's talk about it. And if you want to see the rest of the interviews on there, just kind of go down and click on the next one. Melynn, we appreciate you, and we'll talk again soon.
All right, thanks, Andy.